Bob, this is Jamie Austin. How do you read me? Roger that. We are now seeing the seafloor with the little Herc. The time is 09:29. Sedimented seafloor, some mounding. So, gentlemen, as soon as we're stable, we can begin to move. Roger that.
If you could just remind those talking to you not to talk to you on the EXWL, but on the OKEX, unless they talk on the OKEX, so it doesn't get recorded or transmitted. It sounds like a one-sided conversation.
Roger that. Everyone out there, if you're on the event log, be sure to be talking to me either on Telecon, which goes out to Okeanos Explorer party line, or on the party line directly. We want to make sure that our conversations, two-way conversations, are recorded. So the only way we can do that is to stay on the OKEX channel.
Bob asked what the temperature is, but I'm getting an error here, unless there is another place to read it.
Real-time feed has Little Herc's temperature at 4.36 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
Roger that. Thank you.
Oh, I see. Sirius doesn't read it. And there's an eel there, kind of off to the right middle of the screen.
Beginning to move now with Hercules. Again, our forward speed's on the order of a tenth of a knot. That's something less than 200 meters an hour. We'll be scanning forward, looking for what is our primary scientific goal today, bubble escape, bubble plumes. We've seen some of these acoustically, and we're hoping to confirm at least some of these acoustic signatures on the seafloor. Is that debris on the seafloor, Aaron, or is that biology?
I can't tell. It could be an eel.
Yeah.
It's sitting pretty still.
Yeah, it looks like it might be debris of some kind.
Right.
Looks like it's a circular object, something related to. It's metal. Looks like metal.
It does look like metal. So Bob is suggesting that it could be also a bivalve shell, but I can't really tell how big it is without the lasers.
Yeah, it might be a good idea, guys, to get the lasers. If we get a little closer to this object in our midfield forward, Herc field, we might want to switch the lasers on and try to determine whether this is biology or not. We've got lasers on now. Those are 10 centimeters apart. Is that true? 10 centimeters. So we're looking at an object that's slightly less than 10 centimeters across. Got a mounded seafloor.
So it looks like we're seeing some brine staining and bacterial mats here, which are indicators of hydrocarbon seepage.
No sign yet of any gas escape, but certainly suggests the proximity of seepage.
Some more bacterial mats, the white stuff there.
I think that's probably a bunch of pebbles. Either that or a very large rock outcrop.
Another shrimp.
And Little Herc's got a target too. Dead end. Yeah. Serio's echoes there. Just get later.
It's like a fish swimming up here, a little one.
Watch it, man.
Yeah, there's a bright white object that just left the bottom of the screen. I can't tell if it's a bivalve shell or just...
I anticipate some topography here. We're on the flank of this salt dome. There's going to be some ridges. I have no idea.
or just staining of the sediment or some... It doesn't look like a shell. Probably some bacterial mat. And there are numerous small tubes there.
So
Yeah, this white patch certainly looks like bacterial mat to
those
me.
are bacterial mat.
Little Herc's too low to see uphill. That early return is just the slope. Distant targets are hard reflectors.
We're moving now, about a tenth of a knot, headed for a serious sector scanning sonar set of targets that we think could be escaping bubble streams. Are those tracks, Aaron? The whiter line looking, are those tracks of an organism, or is that my imagination?
It seems pretty large to be the track of an organism. I don't
Okay.
know of anything that would make a track like that.
Okay. Well, it looks a little bit like a furrow now, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
We expect to see some topography along the flank. These exhumed salt domes are bringing up sediments often from great depth along their flanks as they rise. So it would be quite normal, and we see it in the multi-beam bathymetry, that we will see some ridging associated with the southwest flank of the salt dome. There have been some exotic rocks brought up from great depths in the Gulf of Mexico along the flanks of these salt domes. They rise from kilometers down. So you might even see quite old, quite hard rocks along the flanks of these domes. That's been known to happen. Bob Carney chimes in that the furrow we just saw might be a whale feeding gouge. We've seen similar looking features in the Mediterranean on Nautilus that suggest that could be the case, at least at times. We're pretty deep. We're too deep for it to be any kind of a man-made trawl mark or something of that nature.
Some more bacterial mat here.
Got sector scanning sonar targets now about 50 meters out on the Sirius sector scanning sonar. These are discrete echoes
You can see. Sorry.
that suggest to our associates that some of them at least might be bubbles escaping into the water column, but we're headed there, so we'll find out.
You can see some dark staining, some brine staining there, and there are a few small organisms, crustaceans swimming around. Sorry, amphipods. Some of them, and the really small ones I think are copepods.
Now, would these organisms be feeding on the bacteria that create the staining we see? Is that
I believe so.
the order of events?
Because these bacterial mats represent some primary production that's happening locally right here on the seafloor. So you can imagine that this would be a very rich food source for animals otherwise that are getting their nutrition as it trickles down from the surface.
That's great. Biodiversity at work. Hydrocarbon-fed ecosystems. Looks like it might be a larger structure, crab burrow, perhaps.
I missed it.
We're moving towards our second waypoint now. Again, our overall bottom speed is on the order of tenth of a knot, 180, 200 meters an hour. That's a good transit speed. It allows us to evaluate our forward-looking sonars on Sirius and Herc. Again, our overall goal here is to try to identify bubble escape from the seafloor. We're seeing evidence in the biology for seepage of what we think are hydrocarbons, which would be highly likely along the flank of an exhumed salt dome like this, but no evidence as yet for discrete bubble escape.
It looks like, so there's something here in the center of the screen. Could be a tube on the sediment. Actually looks like some kind of plant material to me. It's probably gotten down here from the surface. Yep. And, is that a crustacean of some kind hanging onto it? Well, yeah, a little squat lobster there. As we're going over the sediment, we see a lot of burrows in the sediment, just small holes, and you can see where there are lighter patches around them. Some anemones there. Or Can't see what this. Ah, this looks like some kind of a polychaete worm swimming along. Which Bob has identified as a sea mouse.
Wow. Wonderful.
That's pretty cool.
Wonderful. If there is such a thing as a sexy bottom organism, that's as close to it as I have seen. Sexier than our colleague web pinner, who is now obstructing my view.
It's it's an interesting thing. Before you see worms at the bottom of the sea, you don't think of worms as really being so beautiful, but
I can honestly say I have never seen one of those. That is just
neither.
great. That's great. Spent 3 expeditions in the Mediterranean, and we didn't see one of those. Now, would we know whether that is a male or a female sea mouse from looking at it, or is that something that you wouldn't know? Flip it. Yeah. Right.
I don't know how to tell the genders of polychaete worms.
Wonderful. Okay, gentlemen, let us continue to move along.
That is so.
We're seeing some bigger areas of staining and probably bacterial mats, so
We've got a complicated terrain in front of us on the Little Herc sector scanning sonar. We did not see any evidence of gas escape. We've got target to the right.
right. You can
Target
see
to the right.
carbonate rocks here.
Got rocks. Yep. Looks like hard grounds. Might want to take a good look at these, see if we can see any evidence for escape, bubble escape. This might be a logical place to be looking for that.
There's a crab down there at the base of these rocks, which is a chaseon kind of crab. And I see a squat lobster up there in the right side, the white, small white thing that's moving around on the right side of this rock. And some other kind of orangish colored squat lobsters too, scattered around there. And this big anemone that we see here is called a Venus flytrap anemone.
If you see anything that you want to take a closer look at, just shout out.
Roger that. I think in our quest to look for gas escape, there will be times, I don't see anything here, but we might want to do essentially a 360 around these to make sure we're not missing something. Certainly the biology is fascinating as well, but what you're doing right now is great. Aaron, do you have any sense of how long it takes an anemone to grow to that size on an outcrop like this?
I don't know, and I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that question.
Okay. Got more outcrops in the middle range.
Bob Carney noticed some sparse dead bivalve shells. And also has told us that anemones can move, so it's possible that that anemone wasn't there on this particular outcrop for its whole life.
Bob, do you have a sense of how long an anemone like that lives? That would be fascinating to me. Is this years?
You can see a fish there, that dark shape in the middle of the screen, and a jellyfish, looks like.
According to Bob, there is no information on the age of these anemones. Certainly the largest anemone we saw in that outcrop. That's a jellyfish in the foreground, hey?
Yeah. Wow. Actually, this is a ctenophore here, which are known for having those iridescent-looking ribs there.
Are they they're light-producing organisms? I mean, I've seen...
They're...
Or light-producing organs in the...
I believe these organisms actually just refract light, and that's what's causing this rainbow pattern. And you can see that you can see it moving down. It looks like neon lights or something.
Right.
But it's like they have little prisms, basically. Is that fish again?
Tim, you've asked us what the white staining is on the bottom background. We have been seeing a series of these stains that Aaron thinks are bacterial growths associated perhaps with seepage, and Aaron, chime in.
Right, and alternative things is that it could be, you know, a barite precipitate, but when you zoom in on it, you can kind of tell more whether it's bacteria because it'll have a certain look.
Got a very good view now in the center field of the large anemone we've been discussing on this first outcrop.
Right, it's the Venus flytrap anemone, and these looks like some, I'm not sure, some plant detritus there? Or
Squat lobster, according to our colleagues.
Oh, there are squat lobsters around here, but I think what we
That
were
was
zooming in on
was that an urchin?
It looks like it, but I think I agree that it's just some plant detritus because you can see some parts that are broken off of it. There's another big anemone there.
Got some bottom topography associated with these hard grounds. Again, ridge-like topography is to be expected along the flank of these exhuming rising domes. They're essentially eroded at the top and associated with the pinch out and diagenetic, that is alteration of rocks pinching out against the salt. You're going to see the formation of these hard grounds. That is also facilitated by the escape often of either gas or non-gaseous hydrocarbon. But it's to be expected. We see it in the bathymetric mapping that we've done on this dome, and we're seeing some evidence for this topography right now.
Still seeing lots of carbonate rocks with some squat lobsters on them. Again, that's those little white shapes that you see against the darker rock. And it does look like there are some tube worms down in now the lower left of the screen.
Yeah, maybe we can get a zoom down in the lower left, guys, if you've got time.
And looks like a crab there in that crevice on the right, kind of right of center.
The center lower field of what you're looking at right now, right near the interface, right near the interface with the sediment, lower part of the hard ground, right in front of you.
Roger that. Unfortunately, we can only hear you in the front row. We can't hear Aaron up there at the top, so I can set up.
We'll relay as best I can what we want to see. Looks like a large
There's
bivalve.
Yeah, right, bivalve shell there. And
Yeah,
those do certainly look like vestimentifera tube worm tubes.
Yeah,
And those are certainly an indicator of hydrocarbon seepage. I can't tell if they're alive or not.
let's try to hold that shot, guys, for a little bit so that we can take a look.
Yeah. Okay, I can see, right, yes, I can see the plume of this tube worm here on the right side. So that's their gas exchange organ where they can obtain carbon dioxide and oxygen from the water.
Again, no visible sign of gas escape associated with these structures, but they are certainly indicative of a nutrient feed associated with such hydrocarbon. There's got to be proximity. Beautiful.
And Bob pointed out that there are some sessile polyps, those, not what we're seeing right now, but those smaller things in the background. And what we're looking at right now is a polychaete tube with some two antennae sticking out.
Are we ready to move on, Aaron?
Sure.
I think we are.
The tube we were just looking at with the two antennae sticking out is not a vestimentifera, but the other one that we saw the plume coming out is.
We're beginning to move again. We've got places to go. Certainly we're seeing indirect evidence for hydrocarbon seepage associated with the bacterial mats and the tube worm encrustations on these carbonate hard ground deposits or outcrops. Some of these look pretty well eroded. There are fresh faces, but most of them are pretty bio-eroded. And we're moving on now. We're on our way to waypoint 2. We're going to be covering, we hope, about 1,200 meters of seafloor during this dive.
Another fish and some more white staining here. Two fish actually. A smaller one there.
Are these monospecific bacteria, or are we looking at a very diverse colony of bacteria, or these tend to be?
Bacteria in seep sediments can be quite diverse, but these mats tend to be one kind called Beggiatoa that is a sulfide oxidizing bacteria. So sulfide is often associated with seepage. It's produced by other bacteria in the sediment actually from their oxidizing of hydrocarbons.
Great.
So when you get these big mats, it's usually just one kind. There's a burrow there.
Sector scanning sonar for Little Herc is showing complicated terrain in front of Little Herc, and we're seeing that reflected in these outcrops of varying size of what we're calling hard grounds. Not much visible on the Sirius sector scanning sonar at the moment. Again, to reiterate our overall objective, we're on a reconnaissance dive here. This is dive 01 of leg 3 of the Okeanos Explorer. In the northern Gulf of Mexico. We are on the southwest flank of the Biloxi Salt Dome, looking for what we have previously identified as acoustic evidence for plumes or bubble escape features. And we are in the process of trying to pin down on the seafloor one or more of these seeps for subsequent work to try to quantify gas escape fluxes from these, again, naturally occurring features. We have not as yet this morning seen any evidence for such gas escape. About halfway now between bubble or waypoint 1 and waypoint 2. Looks like another, was that another stenophore in the midwater there?
Ctenophore?
Stenophore.
Ctenophore. Yeah, ctenophore, spelled C-T-E-N.
Ctenophore.
I can't. I'm not sure. Oh yes, yes.
Boy,
Again, you can see those kind of iridescent ridges that they have.
Beautiful creatures. And is that long? Is that a predatory structure behind it? Is that something to a feeding?
I believe so. I don't know that much about ctenophores, but they're cnidarians and as such have nematocysts
Right.
that they
Stinging
cells that
right.
they use to capture prey.
My marine biology course at Woods Hole back in 1973-74 was not completely wasted. Another outcrop, it looks like, hard ground outcrop in the middle distance on the Herc video. These outcrops appear to be of varying size. They're generally similar. They're eroded, not too many fresh faces. They're variously encrusted. They look as though they've been on the seafloor for a while. They've got some pelagic or hemipelagic dusting of sediment on top of them. So they've been up at the seafloor for a while. I guess, is that?
Oh, crap. Good. I'm happy. So as somebody has just pointed out that ctenophores are not actually cnidarians, and they did have one tentacle out, but do those tentacles contain stinging cells?
Yeah, Mike, as you can tell, I don't know much about these at all, but I'm fascinated by them. So feel free to chime in with as much input as you want to give us, and we'll rebroadcast that.
Yes, certainly. Being mostly a coral and seep biologist, I don't know much about these pelagic organisms. So as Mike pointed out, also, those aren't stinging cells, so they don't sting their prey and stun them, but rather that they're sticky cells.
Coloblasts.
Yes.
I had never heard that term. I'm learning already. Yeah, yeah. I mean, here we're seeing a mound in front of us now that could be associated with either a very slow escape of hydrocarbons, but the mound itself is indicative of deposition associated with such an escape. We haven't seen this. We've seen the staining before, but we haven't seen the mounded structure. This is a mound that's looks to be meters across.
Looks like some scattered dead bivalve shells at the base of that rock, and some tube worms in the foreground here.
Quite mounded near field topography on Herc now. Some outcropping hard grounds, but the sedimented seafloor is also quite mounded. Looks like relief on the order of meters. Little Herc is traversing this area at about a meter above the seafloor, so that gives you a sense of the relief.
There's a big red crab on top of this carbonate mound here. Two of them, one on top of the other, actually.
It's a crab convention.
And Taylor points out that these crabs probably are mating.
Well, then we're intruding.
Yes, just a moment ago, it was completely pitch black here. There's an urchin here on top of that carbonate. I think that's just an empty shell at the bottom. Looks like a mussel shell.
These hard grounds have a lot of irregular relief. That could be a combination of the way they're formed. They could be their chemical precipitates, but it's also probably a function of bioerosion, the fact that they're encrusted and being used as substrates for the organisms that you see.
Anyway.
Yep, very nice. Getting a nice view now from Sirius of the topography that Little Herc is going across. That's one of the great advantages of the two-body deployment, is that we get a chance in complicated terrain to see in the far field what Herc is seeing in the near field. And it also gives you a feeling for scale of the features that we're looking at, which is occasionally hard to see or hard to assess when you're just looking at the Little Herc view. Tether between that you see in the left upper foreground of the Sirius view is about 30 meters long. The idea here is to give that tether some slack so that Sirius more or less hangs below the ship, but the tether has slack so that little Herc has freedom to move around. And you're seeing a nice view of that now. Sector scanning sonar for Little Herc now is quite complicated, and that's reflected in the topography that we're seeing in the Little Herc view. When the vehicles get over waypoint 2, guys, we can lay in a course for 3 and just keep moving. Roger that. Yeah, the pace of this is good. It's giving us a chance to look at encrusting organisms and get a feeling for the local topography, but we simply have to keep moving.
Another crab on top of this carbonate and some urchins there on the bottom right side. And an eel, looks like, underneath. And a Chaseon crab under there too. Another urchin on this side. And a fish there in that crevice close to the urchin. Seeing some more mottled staining, and it looked like there was another one of those furrows or depressions off to the right.
Well, this is one of many features in the Gulf of Mexico, which we call an exhumed salt dome. These domes come from great depth. I mean, the salt that forms the core of these features was deposited about 140 million years ago. Since that time, younger sediment has loaded this salt, and it behaves the way caramel behaves when you heat it up. It begins to rise because it's actually lighter than the overlying material. Along the flanks of this salt as it rises are the overlying sediment, which begins to pinch out against the salt. Because the salt's impermeable, fluids migrate up along the overlying sediments against the pinch out of these salts, and that's why the hydrocarbons tend to associate with the flanks of these features. I am seeing in the staining some evidence for lineation of these stained features. The flank on which we sit is oriented approximately northwest-southeast, and the ridges that we see in the multi-beam bathymetry are elongated along the flank of this exhumed the core of this salt feature. So we might be seeing some evidence for lineation of the staining, and that might be associated with the underlying escape of fluids, which comes up along the bounds of these pinching sediments that pinch out against the salt. Now, the salt itself rarely outcrops at the seafloor because when it outcrops, it dissolves. So you will generally see you not see the salt, although we will later in this expedition go to one or more brine pools, and that's actually where the salt is actually dissolving, and the salt, the brine, the super concentrated salty water is actually pooling in a depression as it equilibrates and ultimately leaves to re-equilibrate with seawater. But that's really all I can tell you at this point. We're not seeing the big picture with Little Herc. We're seeing the small mounding, which is probably more about biology than about the geology of the exhumation of this big feature.
It's a big crab right there.
There we go.
This is a magid type crab, which we call spider crabs for a common name.
Yeah.
Now
Can we get lasers on, guys, please? All right, so our lasers are 10 centimeters apart, so that's a pretty good sized organism. I would say what, 30 to 40 centimeters across.
Yeah.
Great, gentlemen, thank you.
And as Tim said on this last leg of this cruise, these animals their legs are really well adapted to moving around on this muddy sediment. And you can see some little lighter spots hanging off of it, and those are little stalked barnacles that live on the crab.
Maybe we can get a bit of a zoom on that if we have time. Getting a nice frontal view. I'm sure that crab is wondering what in the world is happening to it right now. If wondering is part of its normal functioning. That's a beautiful view.
Yeah, and it seems to be kind of sorting through some sediment with its mouth parts there. So.
Okay.
Guys, go chase it right now. Just shoot out there, Bobby.
We've got a target on the sector scanning sonar for Sirius about 10 meters out to the southwest. We're gonna leave our spider crab and head for that. We're again tracking potential bubble escape structures or plumes, and we're doing our best to try to identify some of these. Ground truth evidence or seafloor-based evidence for a series of acoustically defined plumes or bubble streams that we have identified from multi-beam and echo sounding ship-based data in this area.
So we're approaching another carbonate mound here. The anemone on it there in the center of the screen. It looks like this carbonate has some sediment on top of it.
Switch back and forth. That's what this little moon shape thing is. So it's where is that? Right here at the top. Oh, okay, great. So switch today. Wonderful.
So in this area, we're seeing a pretty big continuous carbonate.
Yeah, complicated hard ground topography now. Again, this would be quite common associated with the flank of one of these rising, what we call diapiers or piercement structures. They're actually called piercing structures because the salt is lighter than the overlying sediment and rises when it's loaded. And it creates a chaotic flanking topography along which fluids rise. That's water, oil, gas. And because the salt itself is impermeable, the hydrocarbons often pool up and pond at what we call the pinch outs between the overlying sediment and the salt. And that's where most of the targets for commercial oil and gas exploration in the Gulf of Mexico arise. Probably pretty characteristic of the flanks of one of these domes. That looks like a complicated biology in the
It
center
looks like,
foreground.
actually it looks like fishing line, I think.
Ah,
So,
okay. Complicated non-biology.
right, some anthropogenic input to the seafloor. We actually see this a lot in the deep Gulf of Mexico
There we go.
and in the shallow Gulf. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, right here, this fishing line isn't doing anything, but we've also seen it wrapped around corals, which could be damaging to them. Maybe when a current grabs that fishing line and it could break the coral or prevent it from growing somehow.
Yeah, we are looking at that, Kevin, we are looking at that target out on the Sirius scanning sonar. It's about 15 meters out on the Sirius sonar at a bearing relative, or a true bearing of 180. Very, very complicated topography here now. Under other circumstances, we would be spending a good bit more time actually investigating individual outcrops for biological incrustations and organisms associated with these outcrops. But we are in a rather ambitious reconnaissance mode right now to actually look for plume-related features. And we don't have the luxury today of actually spending more time. Don't desert us, though, because over the next 3 weeks, we'll be spending a lot of time doing exploration, and we'll be spending more time at outcrops like this. Is that
I'm not sure what that was in the bottom right there. We see a tube about the middle center bottom, middle bottom of the screen, which could be a vestimentifera tube worm tube. Bob suggests that other thing that we saw might have been a plastic bag. Those
look like tube worms, yeah?
certainly vestimentifera tube worms. They seem to be growing sideways out from underneath a carbonate there.
Yeah, if we could get a zoom, guys, on that, at least for the amount of time you have, it would be great.
Maybe with the lasers on, too.
So now, should alert these guys to the
And if we can get the lasers on, guys, too, that'd be great.
Yeah, there are a bunch of tube worms. You can see some of their plumes sticking out there.
We have to get off.
stretch out as if we were going
We have lost propulsion for the moment on Okeanos Explorer, so we are having to come off the seafloor.
Actually, did you ask the target?
So these tube worms that we're looking at have bacterial symbionts that oxidize sulfide, which is something that's often contained in seeping fluids. And they can live, at least ones that we found on the upper Louisiana slope. Species up there can live up to 250 to 500 years. And the reason that they can live so long, or one reason, is that they're able to use a buried part of their body that we call the root to access sulfide below the sediment surface. So even after fluid stops seeping out of the seafloor at a high rate, they can more or less mine for sulfide with their roots. That's probably also why we see them sticking out kind of from the bottom of carbonates, is that they're maybe in a crevice where they can stick their roots way down into the sediment without getting blocked by the carbonate itself.
Much less topography here than we've been seeing earlier in the dive. Got a fish in the right foreground there. Another rat tail, looks like. This kind of change in topography would be quite normal along the flank of one of these exhumed salt domes. You'd see ridge-like features, which are the push-up associated with the exhumation of the salt feature. The flanking sediments would come up in a series of upended bookend-like ridges, and then in between those ridges, things would be quite flat. The sedimentation rates here are large enough so that you would, this part of the Gulf of Mexico, which is southeast of what we call the Birdfoot Delta, the outlet of the Mississippi River, it's got some of the highest sedimentation rates in the world, even though they're not as high as they were when during the last glaciation 18,000 years ago. Looks like we have a marker in the upper right foreground. And we've got significant bacterial staining for the first time in quite a while. Get a zoom here if we can. It's a marker, or it's debris of some kind.
It's a marker, yeah. It looks like one of those, a bucket lid marker, the number 2 on it.
Maybe we should investigate that rock, top center.
Yeah, I see some actual live mussel shells there in the center.
Yeah,
or at least I think they're alive.
Dead center in your view now, if we can get a zoom there. Looks like living mussels, yes?
Right, yes. So these are living Bathymodiolan mussels. And we find these kind of mussels where there is active seepage. So there are, you know, chemicals coming from the seep that are in the bottom water. It's the only way that these animals and their symbionts can access that fluid and have enough energy to live.
We're going to want to, are those small shrimp around on top of the mussels?
Yeah, those are shrimp. Those are Alvinicaris shrimp.
So this is the first living mussel colony we've seen on this dive. The vehicles are now just west of waypoint 4. Ship is just north of waypoint 4. Again, no evidence for discrete seepage of bubbles, but as Aaron has just told you, the fact that these mussels are living in concentration below the lip of this hard ground outcrop is pretty good evidence for the proximity to a hydrocarbon source of nutrients. Small crabs are those crabs, the white
yeah,
on the lip above.
Right, they're kind of crab. We call them squat lobsters.
Squat lobsters. That's what a squat lobster.
Right, Galatheid crabs, because they kind of look like a cross between lobsters and crabs. So that crab that we see on the right there is a Chaseon crab, and that's what we call a true crab. It has a much smaller tail that's completely tucked under. If you've ever gone crabbing, you've probably seen this.
Right.
But those squat lobsters, they have a kind of a bigger lobster-like tail, but it's starting to become tucked under. And they're really funny when they swim. They kind of turn around and swim backwards using their tail.
Now, I've seen these Galathea crabs associated with hydrothermal vents as well.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So the same types of crabs are found at hydrothermal vents too.
Right, fair enough. There's a good view. Plenty of opportunities for domiciles for these crabs associated with these dead bivalves, and the natural topography associated with these hard ground deposits.
Yeah. And at vents and seeps, we see those kinds of the squat lobsters around when they're not near seeps, but they seem to be at higher concentrations at seeps, so higher densities, probably taking advantage of the increased amount of food around seeps because, again, there's primary production that's happening right on the sea floor.
Guys, we are going to have to unzoom a bit and take a look around waypoint 4 a bit more. We're still in quest of some discrete gas escape if we can find it. We've got good biological evidence now for proximity to hydrocarbons, but we're going to have to take a look around here.
Roger that. We're just going to wait now until you
Yep,
get the scene.
we're ready.
Moving on.
So yeah, this is the kind of biology that we would expect to see around if we were going to see a stream of methane bubbles coming out. Right there, another cluster of dead or of live mussels there in the center, and some tube worms, some vestimentiferan tube worms on the carbonates surrounding it. And some white, either bacterial mat or precipitate on top of the mussels. And some fuzzy white stuff over there on the carbonate on the left.
Just a great example of the opportunity that presents itself. If there's a nutrient source, the biology is going to find a way. No gas escape, though, that we can see thus far.
There's lots of alvinicaris shrimp around here. We see these around mussels and tube worms a lot in the Gulf. And they seem to get most of their nutrition also from the seep. So there's free-living bacteria associated with these seeps, and that provides an ample food source for organisms that are able to come and graze off of them. Another crab there. See some more bacterial mat and
Yeah, targets
staining.
in front of Herc and it's 090, so lot of bacterial staining. A lot of biological debris as well as what we're seeing as living.
Yeah.
Seems as though the living biology is under the lips of these outcrops.
Right, so we often see those tube worms. Again, we see them again there sticking out from underneath the carbonates.
Looks like some more living mussels on the right foreground there.
Right.
Highly mounded topography. This in itself could be an indicator of formerly active seeps that perhaps are not actively degassing at the moment, but this could be an indication of that.
We'll go ahead and turn off to the right. Six stuff is off to the right. just looking to target the rock cluster in general versus the marble.
Yeah, seeing hard targets at 090. There you go.
I'm pretty far out there anyway. I think I've covered a good deal of the ones close.
These hard grounds are highly dissected. It's pretty typical of a chemical precipitated rock. And then the pitting you see could be the result of the encrusting biology or old fluid escape structures or bubble escape structures. We saw a lot of evidence for that associated with cold seeps, what we call cold seeps, off the coast of Israel last year on Nautilus. You might want to take a look at your own map and give me the best time to actually do it. I don't know how long we can do it before we see interference.
Okay, let me get your position here into my scene, and I'll get back to you.
Roger that. Got evidence for a furrow here. Bob Carney's actually discussed that as a possible whale-related feature. My experience in the Med is that where we get a disturbance of the seafloor, you'll get lighter colored sediment, you get more organic material.
I want to know what screen you're willing to give up. Which ones? Either the sonar or the nav display.
Ooh, tough choice. Oh, that's strange looking. I think we'd probably be willing to give up the nav display. We can probably track you with the real-time feed. So maybe the nav feed would be good to switch with.
So Kevin is asking what frequencies are used by the ROV baseline positioning system. What frequencies are used by the ROV baseline positioning system? 714 kilohertz, Kevin. Sorry, 7 to 14. 7 to 14. So crab there. We're continuing to see some staining, some white staining and bacterial mat, which are indicators that there is some level of seepage around this area.
Yeah, dropping into a depression here, looks like.
And this kind of depression, is this caused by methane gas blowout at some point, or are there other?
You know, it can be dissolution of the salt. You know, often associated with the flanks of these features are dissolution of, because what you've done is you've basically taken the cap off something that's highly soluble. So,
Right.
so as it begins to dissolve through the sediments, you get collapse structures,
Sure.
and that could happen.
Some carbonate rocks, and looks like maybe some live mussels up there in the upper right. I can't tell from here, but and some live mussels there in the foreground too, in the center actually, just above that carbonate.
Absolutely.
Chaseon crab there off to the right.
You know, this is what we saw near waypoint 4, ample evidence for biology living off a nutrient flow, a hydrocarbon nutrient flow, but as yet no evidence for actual gas escape. Biology is so efficient that it's eating the gas before it can escape. Got more up to the upper right, it looks like, and got a real depression there.
Right, and these are relatively small clusters of mussels. So one would imagine that if there was so much, hydrocarbons seeping from the seafloor, there might be actually a lot more.
But that looks like an old
biology.
seep escape structure right there. I mean, those
Sure.
kind of circular depressions. That could have been an old conduit for gas that is not now active. Fumarolic
Got
type
bubbles
structure.
from the middle of that?
Have you got bubbles?
Oh,
Oh,
not a lot, but I thought I just saw one bubble rise up from the
could be.
middle.
Well, let's take
I
a
see
close
something
look.
rising there.
It wouldn't surprise me to see bubbles.
That looks like
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does look like a bubble we've got here.
Right.
It wouldn't surprise me. I just said coming from a structure like this that you would be seeing gas.
Right, and as Bob just said, there was a dark colored one, so that was an oil bubble,
Bubble.
and then what we're seeing rising right there, some kind of a gas bubble or methane or hydrate. Oh, actually, so this dark stuff that we're seeing here is that methane hydrate.
I wouldn't expect it would be, but it could be chemical alteration of something in the carbonates associated with the escape of gas.
Okay.
And it could be an artifact of a time when that circular depression was subject to a much larger escape of material than is presently happening. Yeah, but we're definitely, if we can get a zoom and maybe a little more light on that stream, that would be great.
Yeah, it looks like there's several small oil droplets coming up, and then an intermittent larger gas bubble coming up. I don't know if it's possible to turn lasers on, but that might be nice.
Yeah, maybe we can get the lasers on, guys. It looks like that feature is at least several tens of centimeters across in the long dimension, but that looks like the kinds of, yeah, there we go. Lasers are on now. That looks like the kind of feature we were seeing bubble escape from off Israel. Good bubble there. Bob, you mentioned oil escape. I'm not seeing that. Maybe you can help me see what you're seeing. Is that the darker droplets rising? I guess so.
See, there's one right there.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they
That's
seem,
right,
I
Jamie.
think, to be going a little
There's three or
slower.
four of them on the screen right now.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I've got one. I've got one now, yep. So, Tom, I guess the question I have for you is, if we've in fact got liquid hydrocarbons and gas escaping, is this a candidate for the kind of measurement you would want to make?
No, I don't think so, Jamie.
Okay.
I think this is. I think if particularly if we look over at the EK60, we see pretty weak water column returns in
Right.
this area.
Right.
So this is not the kind of seep we're looking for, although it's very interesting to find it.
Fair enough. Yep. Well, that's a good question. Dropping a target is an acoustic target, correct? Yeah, I think we should. We could call it a mixed seep. I mean, it's not a gas escape seep; it's an oil gas seep, and it would not be. It's very near waypoint 5. It would not be a target for return by the ROV for flux work.
Maybe suggest that we just name them numerically, and we
Sure.
actually in the event log
Fine.
put in the target name and a description of what it is.
Fine. So just call it seep 1.
So then in the event log, we'll put that we're seeing gas and oil.
Yep. No, I'm okay unless the biologists want to look at the streams longer. I think we just have too much ground that we still have to cover. I think we have to move on.
Yeah, I think we should move on too.
You get everything you needed? I just wanted you got decent video.
And kudos to Bob Carney for picking up those bubbles. I was not paying enough attention. Although I did flag it as a structure where we would see such escape of fluids. We saw very similar dimensions.
I would look around here a little bit because as we came into this site, we got a lot of scatter.
Okay.
SBL.
Staining and bacterial mat there. So we're looking around this area because as we approached it, we got some scatter on the EK60.
You can flip your lasers off again, guys, please. Thank you. Now that's an interesting type of, you've got a dark center and whiter on the outside. Can you explain that for us? That's a little different than what we've been seeing.
No, I don't know. I only know, or at least I've always known this dark staining to be what we call brine staining.
Okay.
I don't know what causes it really.
Okay. And is that an eel on the upper left?
Yeah, that's an eel on the upper left.
What do you think, Dave? Do you want to do a little more scanning around? I'm seeing something on the Sirius sector scanner at 045. Is it? Okay. You know, I think we can move on, gentlemen. If you want to lay in a course for waypoint 6, that's okay with me. We're still moving generally east, yes? Yeah.
I think that probably we want to look around these waypoints a little bit.
Okay.
Probably
All right. Fair enough.
have this 25-meter region where we want to look.
Okay.
I think that the next waypoint, which I believe is waypoint 6,
Correct.
looks like one of those persistent strong seeds.
Okay. Great.
So
Well, we'll make sure we give it enough time within a radius of 25 to 50 meters to make sure that we've covered the ground. A lot more of this staining now.
So how does waypoint 6 correspond to these peaks, if you will, or anomalies that we're seeing on the EK60? Tom? Like which one? So you see all these pillars coming, green pillars coming off of the EK60, which is that thing in the bottom left of the quad. And so which one of them is waypoint 6?
That's a good question because that's a line that was run last night, and I don't know what course the EK60 was on. It looks, if I had to look at the bottom, I'd say it was running from south to north maybe, but then they probably turned around to come back.
They did.
They
did. Yep, they did.
That's a good frame of reference for that.
It's got a lot to do with where the wash off the mouth westwards coming. Or it remains going into those turbines right under the
It's another big magid crab. Looks like it might be missing some feet. Or some legs, rather, not feet.
And give me the name of that crab again.
Spider crab is the common name.
Right.
And,
that I know.
magid crab is more
Magid?
Yeah. M-A-G-I-D, I believe.
Is this
We're starting to see some more staining again. Might be getting closer to an area with seepage.
Now, would those have been burrows? Would those have been crab burrows in the lower right foreground, the larger?
I think there's some kind of burrows, and I don't know what makes those kind.
We saw those all over the Mediterranean. They were often these normal crabs. What kind of crab were you talking about? In fact, I think we see one.
Right, these things are Chasion is
Chasion
the
crabs,
genus.
right?
Are also known as golden crabs is their common name.
More hummocky topography now. Some of that's biological, I think, but some of it is not. Some of it is probably related to, again, the overall substructure here, which is the upward movement of this very, very large salt feature, piercement structure, which comes up from below, kilometers below, and disrupts overlying sediment, the sediment cap above it, and ultimately surfaces at or near the water column and then begins to dissolve away.
Do you know how much sediment is overlying this salt dome right now?
Probably not very much. I mean, there are, where you'll actually see these brine pools forming. The salt is actually outcropping. In a place like this, it would vary a lot, but probably not more than 100 or 200 meters or less of material. And remember, this is coming from depths. The sediment thickness here is on the order of 12 kilometers. So it's coming up. The salt core of this is coming up quite shallow. And the fact that it's flat topped more or less at the seafloor is a pretty good indication that it's actually dissolving.
Right, okay. Makes sense.
And then what happens is the capping sediment begins to actually fall back into the depression created by the dissolving salt. So you'll actually have a syncline. You'll actually have a saddle in the overlying sediment. And then you'll often get very complicated fluid escape pathways, both along the outer flanks of the feature and on the inner flanks at the cap. So that along the rim, which is what we're actually crossing right now, you can get fluid escape from a variety of very complex plumbing beneath you, from both the cap of the feature and from the flanks of the feature. Indescribably complex. It's one of the real challenges of trying to map naturally occurring fluid escape structures in the Gulf, is the complexity of the underlying geology.
I suspect you're going to have to close the current survey to do that, right? You don't think data display 1 and 2? Let me see on those. Okay. Or have you been down this road? I haven't. I just have a gut check messing with my gut, but go for it. Okay, I will attempt a minimal perturbation experiment. Okay. How much else are there?
No, it's a crab that's kind of buried in the sediment there.
You guys gotta find me some soups. Not doing my jobs. I don't realize this. Means docket your pay. Postdocs don't get paid anyway, so that's easy for you.
Yeah, no problem.
So what's going on?
So now you have
So urchin there.
sounds like the destination target active. Yeah, you're still listening. Okay, thank you.
Actually, I'm sorry, that's a burrowing anemone, not an urchin.
Not seeing much in the way of biology of any kind except biology up in the water column. The odd burrowing anemone, which I didn't know existed until quite recently. Some modeling which suggests in fauna, but certainly very little in the way of biology. Whoop. Well, wait a minute though.
Wow.
Something right here. It's like a large fish of some kind. What is it?
Squid?
Oh, it's a squid. It's a squid. Just when I said there was not much interesting, there is something interesting. Can we get the lasers on, please? That's a big squid. Those lasers are 10 centimeters apart, so that squid is more than half a meter long. What kind of a squid would that be? Does anyone know?
I don't know, but it's the largest squid I've ever seen. It's pretty cool.
I've seen squid that big in the Eastern Pacific. They're called Humboldt squid, but I didn't know that that a squid that big was existing here. That's quite good looking, I'd say. Yeah, if Mike Vecchione is still online, he's absolutely the right guy to be asking that question to. That is absolutely. Let's get a zoom if we can, guys, in close without. Like to get some really good. That's a highlight reel piece of biology. Wow. Very impressive. Seems remarkably unperturbed by the proximity of the vehicle. The cephalopods are generally quite intelligent, I would think. He seems to have begun to wonder about us, I guess.
They are intelligent.
They're
and
aggressive. They're aggressive as well, aren't they? Generally. Look at that. Fantastic.
They have really well developed eyes too. And there's a holothurian there.
Yep,
a
holothurian,
sea cucumber there.
holothurian in the foreground. Well, that's great. Never fails that when you say there isn't much in the way of biology, that right around the corner there is some biology that you haven't seen before.
I don't know what that is. And a little squat lobster on the holothurian.
Yeah.
I think it is. Oh. Actually, not a squat lobster. That was a magic crab. A little one.
And that's what you're calling a galatheid?
No, so I was wrong
that-
about that. Actually, a magic crab. So not.
Modeling now. Indicative, as we have seen earlier in the dive, of seepage of hydrocarbons as a nutrient source. Vehicles are now slightly south of west, some tens of meters southwest of waypoint 6, and it looks like we've got an outcrop and living biology right in front of us. So we'll want to get a zoom here, guys. You want to give us the lasers again too, please? Looks like a mussel colony, yes?
Yep, so again, we're seeing some of those live Bathymodiolan mussels that live around seeps.
Yeah, we want to take a good look at this. We're in the vicinity of waypoint 6 anyway, so we want to make sure that we're not missing anything. Living mussels.
And a little fish. It's laying there.
Yep. Right in the foreground, nestled into that mussel colony.
An eel pout, Bob says.
An eel pout. Looking hard for escaping bubbles, but not seeing any. We're going to want to take a good look around here, gentlemen, with eyes peeled for escaping gas.
Right on the bottom middle of the screen that you're seeing, or is that something else?
Well, we've been seeing whitish bacterial mats, Tom. I'm not sure that I would see that as hydrate. We've seen similar looking color, though. You can see similar looking things in the background beyond the mussel colony. Want to get a zoom there, guys?
Yeah, that one right in the center looks a little different.
Yeah, we're going to get you closer. You know, pan down just a little. There you go. Yeah, let's zoom right in there as tight as you can get.
A little up there, a little up from there, James.
Let's pan up just a little. There's the eel pout. Pan a little left.
It was right. It was behind the tail of the eel is pointing to it.
Yeah, come up, pan up just a little. There you go, and then pan right just a little. And then if you can zoom there, I'm not seeing anything, Tom, but
A little higher.
I see a shrimp.
Yeah, that right there.
I see a shrimp there. We have been seeing bacterial matting associated with these mussels.
Yeah, you can see some bacterial filaments there on the outside of that mussel. That's that fuzzy stuff that's on the outside of the shell.
It's a place where the other day on leg 2 we definitely saw a bubble stream, though. No evidence for bubbles yet.
Yeah, do you see the brown mussel right in the center right now?
Yep.
It's going over now to the left of the screen. That's what we were talking about. A little bit down, maybe. A little bit left.
Want to pan down and left?
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, can you come in tight there, guys? Right in that depression. I don't know, Tom. It could be bacteria, you know.
Yeah. Yep. We can. Interesting spot.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's take a good look around here. We're a little south and west of waypoint 6, so we want to take a good look in this circle of radius 50 or meters or so. Looks like we've got multiple targets around the little Herc scattering sonar.
Yeah, John, your camera faded more of the light and less of the dark. So they see more of that's more.
There you go. Excellent. Let's get a good view of the close-up topography of Little Herc on Sirius now. Be nice to see some bubbles rising on that view, but I don't see anything. Yeah, let's take a look around a bit if we can. Can I hear you? I'm not. You're not. You're not up for me. I can hear you.
I can talk at Jamie, but then you'll hear everything I say.
That's a
Jamie, you need to listen to the
RVP.
upper row.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a bubble right there. Right up straight.
Okay.
So about once a minute, roughly, we're getting a bubble.
Hey, was that a bubble just coming up?
Yeah, that's what we're thinking right now. Well, let's get tight in there if we think we know where it was. It's up above that depression we were just looking at and to the left. And then we obviously have to give it a little time because the bubble escape is slow.
Just go right on. I think I'm.
Could be right. It could be pretty close to being right there. Yeah.
Came out right there, but I can't say with 100% certainty.
This is the game we played off Israel. The bubble streams were very slow. Yeah, there we go.
Another one.
In front of the muscle. All right, let's tilt down a little more.
You see some more shadows coming up in the foreground there.
I'm seeing shadows
They're
of
like
I'm seeing shadows of something, but maybe it's something that's
closer to us. They're
closer. Yeah.
Yeah, right there. That was that fish that was just under there, swam off from under it.
Okay, so it was over here more to the right, yeah?
You think so? Because they're going straight up like bubbles would.
Yeah, I thought I saw shadows of something rather than a bubble itself, and maybe that meant that the bubbles were actually closer to the vehicle than we were imaging.
You get them in the upper part of the screen very clearly. The last third
Right,
of the screen.
right.
You go, oh, there goes a bubble.
Yeah, it may just be the angle of the light through the refracting through the bubble that allows you to see it better. I'd like to see it coming out of the seafloor somewhere, though. So that's the mussel in the middle of the field of view now, near the fish, huh? I think it's near the fish, yeah.
Left fish or right fish?
Well, the left fish, to the right of the left fish, which is where I think we thought it was coming from originally. But I haven't seen another one since. Let's zoom in a bit more, guys. Let's zoom in a bit, just to the lower right of that fish on the left.
That's here in,
There you go, right there. Yeah, let's give that a minute. I think that's where we all think it came from. The question is, will it do it for us again now? Trouble is, this may not be at a rate that's enough to justify what we would want to do.
there's one.
Yeah, that's right, Jamie. And also, if we looking at the EX60, there's something in the general area that is seeping at a faster rate than this.
Yeah, so
There's something to find near here.
so let's get up and do a little bit more of a search around this waypoint. It looks like the vehicles are west or northwest of this waypoint now. I think we're going to want to come back and do a little bit of a search in a circle of radius 50 meters around here, and see what we see. And you can flip the lasers off. Thank you.
That's right. Ahead of me 20 years. Ahead of me 20 years. Come on. Yeah, I can see some white streaming off there.
Great video, though, gentlemen. Wonderful. Yeah, there's certainly ample evidence for nutrient escape here. So I think we want to give this a good hard look. See if we can see a stream that's more quantitatively significant than what we just saw. This is the holy grail for this dive, is finding a stream like this, particularly on a seafloor like this, which might not be too hard to set the vehicle down at.
Radio check.
Radio check. I can hear you a bit better now. Still like, let's turn it up.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's get a zoom. Let's get a zoom there, guys, right in front of us.
You guys bring the ship over? Absolutely.
So we got Herc's way south of 6 now, huh? Looks like about 50 meters or 70 meters south of 6. But I've got it here, and is that right? Okay, 40. I'm looking at this scale here. Oh, don't look at that. Okay.
This is a vehicle relative to the active target.
Okay.
You get it for all three vehicles,
For the waypoint, which is 6.
which is the red,
Which is
which is 6 now.
right.
But you change.
Sure. Got it.
Absolutely, man.
Yes.
Yeah, we're way at the end of the tether here. If you want to get a much better look at this, we're going to have to move the ship in this direction.
Well,
Otherwise, we can continue our quartering search.
Move the ship back a little. I want to take a close look here. We're looking for gas, and this is another smoking gun, so to speak. So let's do that.
Copy that?
A lot of staining around these outcrops. Both of these outcrops, gentlemen. Want to take a closer look here, I think.
Do little carbonate rocks and a Chaseon crab.
feisty looking crab.
Yeah, it looks looks like it's in defensive mode, defending these rocks.
It's not. It is not. We were calling those crab condos in the Med. I'm not happy that little Herc is coming in for a closer look. Yeah, that'd be great if we could do that. That's where I'm after. That's what I'm after here. Then we might want to look at a series of targets that Tom thinks he sees about 40 meters out east of Sirius. I just want to convince myself I'm not seeing any gas escaping from this rugose outcrop. Are those tube worms?
Yep, those are vestimentifera tube worms, so an indication that there is some level of seepage here. And those are stoloniferans, those cnidarian-like things that look like little anemones that are sticking off of the sides of the tube.
So would those tube worms be alive? Maybe not.
I can't tell, as in I can't see
So you'd be seeing
the live parts
the
of
live at the end of the tubes.
Just if I don't see them doesn't mean that they're not alive necessarily.
Right. Are the tubes chitinous? What are the tubes?
Yeah, the tubes are made out of chitin. That's right.
Okay, guys. I think we can. I think I've convinced myself I'm not seeing anything remarkably active here. I'm not even convinced we're seeing a living colony.
It's a little amphipod floating by.
Yep. That's a highly porous outcrop, though. That's the kind of outcrop off Israel we were seeing gas escape from. You know, that in itself is indicative of porous pathways that might at one point have hosted gas escape. And those are the Magid. Those are Magid
No,
crab?
those
are the Galatheid.
That's right, the Galatheid
Those are
class,
Galatheid.
the squat lobsters.
And again, that's another indication of some kind of nutrient flow, right? That those crabs are sitting there.
Well, we do see them all over the place, but they seem to be more, have a higher density around these seeps.
No sign yet that any of these tube worms are alive. Is there? Yeah.
Well, I see something, but oh yes, there.
Oh, there he is alive. There you go.
Very good.
Very nice.
Oh, and that actually, see the little worm that's sitting on top of there is actually another worm that we think actually might be a parasite on these guys. They kind of just hang out on top of what's called the prostomium. That's the top of the worm.
Huh.
And they're in other places. We've cut them open, and their guts are full of red material, and tube worm blood is red, so it's kind of a indication they might possibly be parasites.
Okay. Roger that. Wonderful close-up. Great. Thanks, guys. Let's, Tom.
It's a little burrow there. Lots of little copepods or amphipods swimming around. Yeah. They kind of remind me of gnats, only on the seafloor.
Hi, Jamie. This is Kevin Jerem, Tom's graduate students here at CCOM. Tom's out of the room at the moment, but I think we wanted to head to about a bearing 0.
It's more bacterial mat. It looks again like there's the orange and white kind of Veggiatoa, sulfide oxidizing bacteria.
Yeah, I'm going to want to get to at least 8 by the end of the dive. So give me an estimate at 0.2 on, we've got an hour and 15 minutes. What's that going to get me?
It looks like some tube worms there, kind of buried in the sediment.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, we're going to have to move unless we see something pretty provocative here. If so, we'll stop. If not, we're going to keep moving. I don't want to, but I think we have to.
Just a big fish and another one of those big magid crabs there.
It's pretty photogenic terrain. Undersea rock garden. Now that's not a rat tail fish. That's a different kind of fish there, huh?
Yes.
Oh, maybe it's a rat tail. I don't know. That's a big crab, though, isn't it? It's amazing.
I think it's different than the rat tail. Mike says the fish may be a cusk eel.
Thank you, Mike. What we've seen before, complex carbonate hard grounds, staining, not a lot of evidence for encrustation.
No, just some scattered tube worms.
You know, and it's possible that a lot of this hummocky terrain is related to prior escape of hydrocarbons and differential dissolution of underlying evaporites. That could create some of the topography that we're seeing. Outcrop in the mid-range left. Might want to take a little closer look at this, gentlemen. Yeah, let's keep going.
See a shrimp and some fish ahead of us. actually, so there was a shrimp and, or sorry, a fish. To the left of that, I think a piece of wood. I'm not sure what this is. It could be fishing line. We often see fishing line kind of spooled up, you know, but I'm not sure what that one is. But it looks maybe a little too thick to be fishing line, maybe some other kind of cable. So the topography is getting a bit more interesting here. It was completely flat just a moment ago, and now we have some
I knew it was the minute I came back in.
some carbonates and I think some live mussels there in amongst those carbonates.
Yeah, and those depressions are worth taking a look at, particularly the tight round ones. They could be indicative of gas escape, so we want to avoid those. You know, in particular, the tight circular depressions, those can be quite indicative of gas escape, recent or active. And so if we see one of those, we're going to want to take a closer look. There's a mussel. Is that a bivalve? That's a bivalve shell in the foreground there.
It's another magid crab.
Let's take a look at that depression in the upper left there. Yeah, I think that's Herc. I think that's Herc up. Further out, I don't know, but I mean that. Yeah, we've got a target out on the Sirius scattering sonar about 37.5, 40 meters out. Looks pretty interesting relative to the vehicle. Well, I just want you to take a look around. You know, where we see one interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind just maybe not spinning, but at least scanning. Highly ridge-like topography now. Got a big target out in front of us on the Sirius scanning sonar. We're headed for very, very uneven topography now. Big mounds. Yeah, yeah.
There's a clump of mussels there on the left side.
Yeah, it looks like we've got mussels left, panning left. Yeah, take your time. We want to take a good look at this area, gentlemen. There we go. Yeah, you got a good community of mussels to your left center. Roger that.
I think that's the largest clump of mussels we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Largest contiguous
Yeah, I
clump.
think so. We're going to want to give this a really good look, gentlemen. Looks like we've got some tube worms there, too. Save the best for last. That's my motto.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, hang on. Every time you sit down, you pick up sediment, and then you drag it along with you. So, I would not necessarily sit down if you can see what you can see, okay? Without doing so. There's something we really need to macro when you sit down, but let's not trash it up before we make an orbit.
I agree with that. Yeah, good to stabilize here. But we're going to want to take a good look at these.
Yeah, it did. That's true. Yeah, because Sirius is looking down at a sharper angle, we need a better reflector to generate a usable return. Mussel shells are almost perfect acoustic corner reflectors.
Yeah, yep. Looks like we've got some dead bivalves in the foreground, huh?
Mm-hmm.
John, stay up high and push to the far side of this so we see the entire perimeter before we yeah, good.
Yeah, we saw mussels here, but we even looks like a few tube worms there in the foreground on that
Yeah.
rock.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yep. plus bacterial staining, which we're seeing in association with these mussel colonies when we see them. This is by far the biggest one we've seen on this dive. For those who haven't been following our event log, we are extending the bottom time here by approximately 90 minutes. We were going to be coming off the seafloor in about 10 minutes. We're going to stay out until around 4:45 p.m. local time to do a thorough examination of this area. We're still in search of an active bubble stream for subsequent testing. So this is our best candidate so far for finding such an event, such a natural seep. So we're going to take a good close look at this mussel colony and surrounding targets between waypoints 8 and 9.
Some more carbonate. So we got a Bathymodiolan mussel bed here with a few tube worms over on a carbonate there, I think back behind this thing now, and a fish. Now on the left part of the screen.
A closer view with Herc in a mode that allows us to scan the area in the vicinity of the mussel colony before taking a closer look.
So we've circled around and we're looking at the same mussel patch again.
Yeah, from the other side.
From the other side
From
now.
the upridge side. It also gives the chance the water column that we've stirred up to clear. So far, still no obvious voluminous stream of bubbles from any of these features. We haven't taken a close look yet, but we haven't seen anything very obvious. But we've been pretty far up above these features.
Okay, Jamie, we've boxed the compass here.
Yep.
And we're going to do a little pirouette around.
Okay.
If there's anything you'd like to see in detail, sing out. Otherwise,
Well, I do want to take a closer look at this colony. So when you're positioned to do it, I think probably looking at it into the slope is the best way. It looks like you're up above it now, looking down at it.
Yeah, Roger.
So
We'll get to the opposite side.
right,
Of this pool.
and then I want to take a pretty good close look at it, left to right, right to left, whatever works for you.
Yeah, what we're doing is an orbit right now, and when we arrive on the far side there, we'll look right into this.
Roger that.
gas.
Roger that. It's the biggest colony we've seen so far, so I think it deserves a pretty solid look. That hollow, that depression in the lower right center, in particular, is someplace I'd want to take a look at. Those are pretty. Those deep crevices, those circular depressions, are usually places where bubbles might be sneaking out. So I want to take a pretty close look at that. And then we can move slowly up slope and look at the mussels in detail. Looks like we've got some dead shells down lower on the slope. Well, they're not dead shells, dead bivalves. Shells are not dead. I'd hope you would not have to. If we can keep the clarity good, that would be better for me. I'm not seeing obvious signs of gas escape, but if we muddy the water, it's going to be harder. Is that one of those cusk eels, you think, or?
It looks similar to the fish that we saw earlier.
Yeah.
So, as Bob identified as a cusk eel.
Sing out, anybody, if you see anything that looks like escaping anything. I don't see anything yet, but my eyeballs are probably not the best in the room. Yeah, yeah. It's not as extensive a field as they saw in Lake 2, but it's pretty good sized.
It's interesting how there's, to my eye, my initial impression is that there's kind of a zonation where over there off to the right there are some smaller mussels. They're smaller, browner looking ones. And then, or lighter brown, I should say. And then over to the left, more larger ones.
Yeah. Now, the encrusting organisms on those mussel shells are these small, what were they, cnidarians, or
Oh,
these
Yeah, I think what we saw earlier were some kind of small polyps, so some kind of cnidarians.
And it looks like, I mean, so you think that the browner mussels are actually just more juveniles than the bluer mussels to the lower left?
I believe so.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't have a really we don't have experimental data to tell us that, but it's
Okay.
just my impression that these browner ones tend to be smaller.
But it's not a different organism. They're all the same
No.
mussel. They're
Yeah.
just different sizes.
Yeah.
Another depression with bacterial staining center right in your midfield, which we want to rotate and take a look at.
Right, there are some polyps, or it looks like a colonial anemone of some kind encrusting that whole rock there on the center of the screen.
Yeah, those holes, those circular depressions are where I would be expecting to see bubble escape under ledges, for example, in the hard ground. Don't see any, but that doesn't mean that there might not be some. We haven't seen evidence for voluminous escape anywhere. That's a great job, though. Just slowly quartering the colony. Yeah, Bob, I can't tell whether the water is shimmering or not. I don't think so. I haven't seen much evidence for it. I'm not seeing any evidence for fluid flow out of any of these depressions. Got crabs, we've got shrimp, small shrimp. And as Aaron clearly says, there are mussels of a variety of sizes associated with these. I mean, do they have growth lines on the shells, these mussels, the way
Yeah.
mussels in shallow water do, so that you can actually estimate age from looking at the shells?
Yeah, the thing is that they certainly do have growth rings. We just
Rings.
don't know what they mean. We
Ah.
don't know if they're laid down annually or what. So
Roger that. Some of them are pretty big. Can we get the lasers on, please? There we go. Lasers in the center foreground. Some of these mussels are clearly longer than 10 centimeters, perhaps closer to 20. That's a big mussel.
right, and we've seen really big mussels at this depth. A species called Bathymodiolus brooksii, which actually has two kinds of symbionts. It has methanotrophic symbionts that use methane to oxidize. They oxidize methane for energy, but also chemoautotrophic symbionts that oxidize sulfide and use that as energy to fix carbon.
You can see those lasers 10 centimeters apart in the midfield, and you can see that many of these mussels are much larger, 20 to 30 centimeters, some of them. That's a big mussel, dinner-sized mussel. I doubt these would taste very good, but nonetheless. Yeah, center upper right, we've got another depression. Scan up and to the right slightly, and let's zoom in. It's a great job, though, guys. This is what I wanted to do. Water clarity is excellent now. Having said that, I don't see any evidence for escaping gas anywhere. But see that depression, now it's coming into view. I'd like to zoom tight on that. Let's take a look at it for a minute or so. That's where I would expect to see gas escaping in a place like that. A little darker staining, maybe more sulfide. Although gas was escaping right around the mussel shells the other day during leg 2. That's it on your center right. Yep. And we can take a zoom in and take a look. It's right where your lasers are now.
Little crab hiding in there. Or a squat lobster, probably.
Yeah, there's something in there.
Or it's true. And there are lots of shrimp around here too. Those albinocaris shrimp that we saw earlier that are often associated with seeps. They congregate around mussels and around tuberworm aggregations. This whole rock is also encrusted with some small cnidarians, anemones. And I think that crab under there is a Chaseon crab. Hard to tell, but that's my best guess.
That's good, guys. I think we can come back out and finish quartering this.
Oh yeah, there's a squat lobster there by the right laser.
Some very large mussels. Not all the mussels are alive. There are dead shells in the foreground. I don't know whether it's true or not, but the live mussels appear to be occupying a depression in this ridge. And that in itself could be indicative of some kind of seep that they've occupied a topographic low in this. Yeah, we can take a closer look at those. I'm always amazed when you zoom in how much complexity there is in the ecosystem associated with a zoom. Sure, go ahead. Absolutely.
That's very true. There are quite a lot of animals associated with these mussels. Pretty, I would say a diverse community, except that the diversity is lower than you really see in a lot of other places. And that's because this kind of habitat has chemicals in it that are toxic to a lot of animals. And so there are only a few that are able to really tolerate those conditions. But the ones that can thrive there because there's lots of food around.
Now, are these hairy overgrowths? Are these byssal threads for the
Yes.
mussels? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So byssal threads are fibrous extension of the muscle tissue, so that they use those to attach to one another, and that stabilizes the clump of muscles. In the foreground there, I see it looks like a polychaete worm, a polynoid, I think. Yes, a polynoid or scale worm.
It looks to be a shrimp in the lower left.
Yep.
Maybe a tube worm. Is that a tube worm there, or is that in the center view?
I am not sure.
But those,
They do look like yeah, those might be small tube worms.
again, we're looking at a clump of live mussels.
Yeah.
And we are not seeing any gas escape associated with these with this colony of mussels, although gas escape has been seen from similar-looking colonies during leg 2. A lot of shrimp.
Yep. There's definitely some tube worms right
Yeah,
there
I think
that we're looking at.
we certainly see tube worms and shrimp as well. So that was great, guys. Thank you.
Um,
I don't think so. I think we'd probably be better off now moving slowly towards waypoint 9. I don't want to go fast here between here and 9. I want to move pretty slowly. We've got the time. We've got about another hour on the seafloor, and we don't have that far to go. So let's resume our scanning with Herc and be prepared to stop and take close looks between now and the end of the dive. Very nice work here, though. I like it. It's pretty rich in possibilities, so we want to take full advantage of that.
it's a big magic crab there. Seems to be eating stuff out of the sediment. There's some plantitritis there, the closer thing, and then a crab off in the distance that we just passed.
We can turn those lasers off, guys. To the seafloor, and colonization goes away completely.
That's true for most of those animals that we see at seeps, but that red shrimp there, for example, probably does not get much of its nutrition from seep input, and in fact does make most of its living from getting all that stuff that trickles down from the bottom. But as you can see, there's way more scattered. There aren't very many of them. You don't see lots aggregated together. Yeah.
Back to a hummocky seafloor, not with much evidence for biological colonization, but there we go. Something in the immediate foreground. That looks like trash.
Yeah, looks like fishing line again.
Yeah, that's trash. Not a good thing. Not a good thing for an ROV, that's for sure. That's the most substantive piece of it we've seen, in fact.
Yeah. Sometimes you see so much, just like somebody dropped a whole spool there.
Yeah, that one looks like it extends into the middle distance, though. That's going to be a place to avoid. Looks like more of it there. It's quite a lot here.
You have to check that with all the police.
Right, another holothurian on the right side of the screen. It's not there now. There it is. Another fish.
Excellent. Yeah, go up and over the top here and let's take a look.
Oh, I'm stretched. I'm out of room.
Jeff, you can turn tail to it and give him a little bit more. Just take auto head off and let him pull out.
Copy that.
Yeah, so we see some rocks here, but we're out of room on the tether, so we have to wait for.
Yeah, now just push hard, John. Push hard, John.
Push forward.
Yeah, just you have to use a lot more force on the stick, but then turn left. Just want to see what's here.
There's a big fish there. Another one of these, I think, cusk eels. But that's an interesting looking
Yeah.
mound. That's a big mound. We're going to want to take we're going to want to quarter this, I think, gentlemen.
Okay.
We can't. Not going to be able to do it. Okay.
Mark it, Tom.
Yeah, let's mark it. Interesting looking feature, though. That's a.
It is interesting. It's completely a different color than the
That looks like a
surrounding
construct.
seafloor.
That looks like some kind of a construction that might have been related to an active seep at some time, at one time or another.
Just hang here, John, because front gates of tether Sirius comes to the east.
Copy that.
That's a really looking. That's almost looks like a fumarole on a volcano. That looks in part chemically precipitated. It's a pretty provocative looking mound and suggests how some of these other mounds may have been formed. And then we've got a lot of topography here, a lot of interesting things to look at. Yep.
Oh, crab scuttling along.
Crab defending his home turf. Yeah. Well, these look like some of the cold seep structures that we saw off Israel. Some of them had a gas escaping, some not, but they looked like cosmic mushrooms. These, the precipitated, those rocks could be in part precipitated by gas escape. Although the gas isn't active now, it does look as though they were active and actually created the topography that you're seeing.
Well, he's stretched out. He's okay.
A lot of crabs here.
Right, they're very active here.
Well, I'd like to make sure that we haven't missed anything. We're still southwest. The vehicles are still southwest of 9. Ship looks to be more or less over 9 now, so that once we stabilize it, we've got time to take a pretty good look around.
So, that mound was just over that ridge there, I believe. I understand your concern, Tom. Anything bigger sticking up behind will show up on sonar. It is. There's a lot going on.
There's a big crab there in the background. Big spider crab.
A fish there too,
Yep.
amongst those little
Yep.
rocks.
You know, there's a lot of topography here. I think some of these depressions are probably related to former gas escape. I'm not seeing any bubbles now, but I feel sure that some of this is related to former fluid escape. Certainly, you've got enough seepage to support biology that you see bacterial staining, and I don't see mussels, I don't see tube worms, but topography is suggestive.
John, I'd run back to Serios, check it out. What are you seeing of that, Jeff? Okay.
It's one of those Galatheids, huh?
Okay, maybe close enough to me.
I think so.
Missed it.
Yeah, Jeff, look at your tether cam. He's already coming at you. Right in here.
Again, you know, bacterial activity associated with a depression, I think that again testifies to the fact that this seepage, the lows are where these seepage is coming out. Probably former vents of some kind, chemical precipitate rocks around the edges.
There's some light.
Small depressions, bacterial mound or bacterial activity associated with the lows. Can we take a closer look at this one right in front of us here, gentlemen? Is that doable?
I think I see bubbles coming out there.
Yeah, let's take a look at this one.
Oh yeah, it's actually a stream.
Yeah, let's take a look at this one.
Do we want to actually sit down or just hover?
Well, if we can hover without disturbing things, let's do that.
coming out of that?
Looks like it. Yep, I think so.
Alright, Brian, we can go for a little zoom here.
Right on the top of the screen there, center?
Yep, yep.
Alright, you can see right where they're popping out there. It's beautiful there.
Oh, what we've been looking for all day.
Right. That's it.
Can you turn the laser on?
Yeah, let's put the lasers on, gentlemen. Yeah, it looks like we're about a 10-centimeter ledge there, but that's the best bubble stream we've seen all day. And it's coming out of the little hole above the major lip. It's coming out of one small hole just above. And the interesting thing is that we're not seeing any biology encrusting around that particular escape structure. I'll pan up just a little. There we go. Well, Tom, there you go. I don't know if that's giving you an acoustic response, but that's the best bubble stream we've seen all day.
Well, it'll be nice to look at that for a minute and then just kind of poke around and see if it's just by himself or if there's a couple others here.
Roger that. All right, we're going to take a look at this for a little while, gentlemen. Let's pan up a bit and zoom in on it, and then we're going to look around this vicinity. The vehicles are just west of waypoint 9 now anyway, so we've got time to take a look and see if this is a field of escape structures or whether this is the only one we see. Well, that might be a pretty good place to actually try to do some work. We have dropped a marker here, yes?
Yep.
And this will be SEEP 2, I guess.
Actually, video us to adjust some shutters and things to try to catch these bubbles. Back in if you're bothering a little bit.
So you want to adjust something to take better imagery of this, yes? What do you need in order to do that? Do you just need to stay here longer? Okay. Okay. Right, but you don't need to sit down on the bottom. You got that, Jamie?
Yep. I got it.
Roger. Oops. Sorry.
I think the good thing here, Tom, is that we could probably modify the ROV and come back here and have a pretty good shot at doing what you want to do. I don't know if we could actually get these bubbles in front of the grid because we're in front of a pretty good slope, but probably could get the bucket over this stream.
Let's come wider and also move in on that.
The problem might be getting this stream in front of the grid because we're on the lip of a slope, but we might be able to do it.
For right now, we're actually just trying to adjust the camera settings, the shutters, and the shutters and the gain in order to try to see individual bubbles on the frame grabs later on.
Seems to me that there's two streams there. One faster and one slower. But maybe I'm not sure.
So the question was, it seems like there are two zooms here, one faster and one slower. Is that right?
Just touch. And that'll stabilize your process. Take your time. Rock it a little bit. Go full wide on the nose. There you go, pretty close to it. Yeah. There's a little ledge here. Just with the corner of your skids. So you're there. Everything right on it. Showing up a little bit. You want to get any closer. That's the lightest of pressure. So much thrust here. Yeah, they should come together, right? Well, just hold here and see if they settle down a little bit now that you're here.
It's a little Munidopsis squat lobster off to the left.
Stable position, I think. Any better light there? Yep.
And if we can get a bit of a zoom in there, guys, when you're stable, that would be good.
Yep, I know what you want.
Oops. As we may be seeing multiple streams from around that one spot. I'm seeing one, but Bob thought he saw two.
Yeah, there's definitely two streams there,
Oh.
or it's just coming
I
up
saw
around
two
the rock
streams,
two different
not two
ways.
Right,
streams.
right,
Okay.
fair enough.
Right, I see that too. Are you trying to image both of them?
Well, we're just trying to see what we see right now, trying to determine how many different places. It's going to determine a little bit how easy it is to place the ROV for future reference with grid behind. It's going to be a difficult place to, although we probably can do it right there. That's not going to be trivial, though. Unless we hover above that outcrop, which I guess we'd have to do. Looks like about one or two or three bubbles per second.
You want to try to swipe us from a different angle, maybe?
If you can, be good to see it from several different.
Other side of that rock as well.
Pull wide. Try to get ourselves a different angle on there. Okay. See how it's
I'm sorry.
okay. There's a seismic vessel. We're in its track. You have to pull off 4:45.
Okay, fair enough. I think we have a. I think we can. I think we can turn them off. I think we're good. Gentlemen, we've got about 25 minutes left on the seafloor. We have a seismic vessel. We're in its path. They don't turn for hell or high water, so we are going to have to. We're going to have to get off the seafloor. I see the vehicles as being slightly west of waypoint 9. I'd like to get to waypoint 9 with Little Herc before the end of the dive. So if we think we've got enough here, video, I'd like to move.
Yeah, Jamie, the one thing that would be nice to do is to find out if this seep is in isolation. If we want to relate this to the acoustic data, is this the only thing contributing to our acoustic signal, or are there a couple other seeps
Right.
within 5-10 meters of here.
Right. So Tom
That's the question
Tom
was
brings
there.
up a good point. Before we leave, let's see if we can come off the seafloor enough to scan around and see if there are any other obvious streams within visual view of Herc in a 5 to 10 meter radius before we move to the east.
Let me know when you're ready, Brian.
But Tom, bubbles are rising here at the rate of at least 2 to 3 a second, and there may be more than one stream. You can see in one of the Sirius cams that we're looking at a pretty good stream of bubbles here. And there may be more than one source.
Absolutely, man.
Yep.
Yeah, there's another
Yeah, we
one right there, slower.
leave the bottom till quarter after 5:15.
5:15. Okay. So we're actually good for another 45 to 50 minutes here. So the pressure is off. Let's take a good clean look around this depression in front of us. These hard grounds were around the edge. There's a depression behind. I'd like to take a look around before we leave this. There may be more than one stream associated with this large depression. See the one in front. But let's take a look around and see what we see before we leave. There may be around the lip of this depression multiple sources of bubbles, and that would be worth knowing. Right. So what I'd like to do is just circumnavigate the rim, see if we've got other evidence for escape. We'd like to get a sense of the collective escape of gas here, if there's more than one vent. One of the goals here is to try to identify seeps that we can then correlate directly with an acoustic plume. So if there is more than one seep that's contributing to one of these plumes, we'd like to know about it in a small area. But I'm glad we found one, personally. I think a lot of this topography is ultimately related to fluid escape. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Got a big depression here.
Yeah, this one, the sides of it
Yeah, this
aren't
isn't
even smooth. Yeah.
This is interesting. Well, this could be, now remember, gentlemen, we're dealing with a rising salt dome. So when the salt encounters the seafloor, it dissolves and can collapse, and you literally get sinkholes associated with the flanks of these domes. And we could be looking at a feature like that here. Pretty interesting, though. You can sometimes see brine escape. You might see shimmering water here. But we want to take a really close look here. If there is bubble escape, this would be an obvious place to be looking for it. Certainly the most interesting feature we've seen geologically all day. We'll want to be getting a closer look at that depression, that cave in the back of this feature, if we can get up and over it. But this is not unlike collapse features you see associated with rising salt domes. It's where the salt actually encounters the seafloor and begins to collapse and dissolve beneath a cap of non-salt sediments, and the cap then collapses into the depression created by the dissolving salt. great view from Sirius now. Looking, it looks like a sedimentary volcano. This doesn't necessarily have to be associated with any kind of escaping hydrocarbons. This could be just related to salt dissolution and collapse. And that would probably not be related to hydrocarbon escape. Nonetheless, an interesting feature geologically. Yeah, if we can get Herc, I don't know how easy that would be for you to do, but if you can get Herc down lower beneath that major ledge in front of you and look into it, that would be useful for me. I don't want you to obviously create a situation where you're going to get stuck, but if you can do it, I'd like to get under it and take a look. And get some light in there. Doesn't look to be much bigger than Herc is itself, so that may not be so easy to do. And I'm going to want to get a zoom on the whiter material in the left of that cavity. That could in fact be salt. You might actually be seeing rock salt that is in fact dissolving. That could be part of the diapir. That may not be bacteria. That could be salt. That could be the salt core itself. If you can get a zoom on that, I'd appreciate it. Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, my guess is that is in fact the salt core of the Biloxi salt dome. You're actually seeing an outcrop of the salt itself, and what you're seeing is a collapse of, and see in the background, see the similar looking feature in the background.
I think
that's actually the salt itself.
Could that be methane hydrate?
Well, it's without getting in there and getting a sample, it's but it could be.
And the reason I say that is that it's covered with these worms, and I've seen when there's methane hydrate, there are these worms called methane ice worms.
Ice worms, yeah, I've heard that.
And they live in these depressions like that.
Well, can we get more of a zoom there, guys?
Oh yeah, that's them. So my impression then, basically because I'm seeing these worms here, is that I think that is the methane hydrate.
Ah. Well, I would absolutely bow to your wisdom on that. And those ice worms are the orange features.
Yep. So you can see them pretty well over here. And they're a pretty weird animal. They live in these depressions on the methane ice, and the reason that there are depressions there, we think, is that they just move water across it and constantly are causing it to dissolve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we can get in really tight on those, that would be great. I don't know if you can, how much more you can get a zoom, but that would be really interesting.
Some of the hydrate on the left looked like it was stained brown. Did you notice that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if we can pan left a bit and get in the foreground, it'll give us a better relationship to the hydrate to the organism. Yeah, right in there, left center. Fascinating.
Yeah, this is the first time that I've in person seen methane hydrate with ice worms on it, but having read a paper about these guys,
I've heard about them.
they did have different colored bands of hydrate that they were living on too.
Well, and that could be part of the reason for the collapse is that you actually have a methane cap. You know, you're not seeing gas escape now, but you've got a methane cap here, and the methane got in contact with seawater and began to dissolve, and you've created this cavern. Could also be salt collapse, with some seepage of hydrocarbons creating the methane in the cavern.
Right, I was wondering if this, because the cavern is there, that's why the methane hydrate is forming there.
And stable enough not to immediately exsolve.
Right.
Yep. Fascinating.
Ready for a Z video? Oh, okay. No problem. Much more stable now, so.
Ah, fantastic. Fantastic. Look at that. That's great. No, it's not salt. This is methane hydrate. This is hydrate. It's not salt. These are worms that are actually living in association with this methane hydrate, and I guess metabolizing it, huh? Is that what?
Well, so they're bacteriivores. They eat bacteria. The bacteria are what are metabolizing, the methane hydrate. So this methane hydrate has methane in it, obviously, but also is associated with a lot of sulfide too. And we thought at first, or scientists thought that these worms would be eating methanotrophic bacteria, but their stable isotope signatures indicate that they're eating sulfide oxidizing bacteria. So although there's obviously lots of methane around here, there's also a lot of sulfide.
Sulfide, right. Now, are the hollows they're living in, is that the natural product of the fact that they're predating the bacteria? They're actually living in hollows, or is that the way the methane is actually forming and they just occupy the hollows? Looks to me like they're actually creating the hollows themselves. Is that a product of the predation of the bacteria?
No, so I think that they are creating the hollows, and I think that it's a product of them moving their, I can't remember what they're called,
appendages
but the appendages on the sides and moving water across it constantly.
Which dissolves the hydrate.
Right,
which dissolves the hydrate.
And they're doing that to, help the bacteria to have what they need. So they need carbon dioxide and things from the seawater.
Fantastic. Never seen that before. I've heard about them, but I've never seen it. Ah, it's wonderful. Fabulous work, gentlemen. Really, really nice. But not a bubble.
No.
Fascinating, but not a single bubble. Not a single bubble anywhere. Right. Yeah, we can take.
I think Bob Carney saw a non-moving bubble.
We can take a look and see what we've got in terms of other depressions associated with this. I still think it may in fact be a collapse related to salt, but the collapse is creating fluid pathways for the methane to be released and form a hydrate as it reaches the water column. The fascinating thing is, how do the worms get to the methane, or to the hydrate? Are they in the larval form in the water column, or?
Well, that is the mystery of any really patchy resource.
Right. How do they get to the resource? If it's patchy, how does the organism get to where it needs to be to live comfortably? They're occupying an ecological niche which is not common. So it's really interesting.
However, we've seen this same species within mussels. So you collect a bunch of those mussels there, and they're living in there too. So they don't necessarily
Just live on hydrate.
need to live on hydrate.
Right. They're living on bacteria
Right.
that are living on a variety of nutrient sources.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's less than 5 meters away from me, and it's right in front of me.
Since we don't get pilot communication being recorded, if you guys could periodically just comment about what you guys see.
Yeah, we're in the vicinity of waypoint 9. We have dropped an acoustic target for a seep we've called seep 2, which is our only active seep today, or active bubble stream. We've actually got 2 streams coming from seep 2. We've got some scatter in the USBL, the ultra short baseline navigation for the vehicles right now. We've also investigated what to me appears to be a salt collapse feature. And as part of that feature, we've seen hydrate accumulation under the lip of this feature, a cavern associated with this feature, and ice worms feeding on bacteria associated with this hydrate. We've got less than 30 minutes left on the dive now, and we're continuing to work in this immediate vicinity of waypoint 9 and seep 2. As I've said, we've got a fair bit of scatter and vehicle location now. But we're working in a very small area, and we'll continue to be here for the rest of the dive.
Oh, that's the dome that we saw earlier that we thought looked interesting, but didn't have enough.
Yeah, I think that it would still be worth a closer look now, though. We have about 20 to 25 minutes. I'd like to take a little closer look at it. I think that is in part a chemical precipitated dome.
Yeah. Yes.
I think we can look at all of it if you've got the tether to do so. There you go. Yep. You guys have been very good at that. I'm an orbital overview fan. Is that plant debris in the foreground?
I don't think so, but I would like to take a closer look at that.
We will. We'll take a spin around it, and we'll come back, take a closer look. It looks like a ledge. It actually looks like it looks like another ledge underneath, doesn't it? It looks like a hard ground with a lip. Boy, that looks chemically precipitated, that mound. That doesn't look
right. And so that little ledge there, Bob Carney says more ice worm, and I was wondering the same thing because it looks a bit like the darker methane ice that we saw on the other.
Yeah, we'll take a look, Bob. We're going to take a spin around it from above first, and then we'll come take a look at it in detail. We've got time. We've got about 20 minutes left on the bottom. This could be our last close look before we have to come off.
bad. I think there's a ridge up there. Stepped on.
Yeah, so the ledge is in your right center now. So when we get down, we're going to want to come down near the seafloor and take a look at it, and if possible, into it. It's clearly what it is. It's a hard ground lip. You can see the shadow of the lip now from above.
The texture of these small white bits that are lying around is interesting. I'm not sure what that is, if it's small crumpled up carbonate or what.
Yeah, I think it's fractured carbonate. I think it's. I think they're.
That looks like methane ice again, because it's got that almost honeycomb appearance when you have those little depressions from the worms.
We'll get closer. Take a look. I'm wondering whether you mean this. You mean the sitting on the seafloor? I wonder if it would be stable. I would like to get closer to it than we are right now. If settling down is what is the way to do it best, then I would like to do that.
Might want to back up a little bit so the light catch this leaking.
I'm seeing a lot of. Am I seeing fluid coming out of that? Am I seeing?
I'm not sure if that's fluid coming out or if it's just the bottom being stirred up.
I don't know. I'm thinking I'm seeing fluid coming out of that hole. That looks to me like fluid coming out. There's a lot of commotion in the ocean associated with that hole. Let's get a zoom. Take a look.
I don't see any worms.
Well,
wait, yes I do.
yeah, yeah. So there we go. We are looking at hydrate again. It's just a different color, and those are worms associated with it. So that lip is hydrate. Well, then it argues that most of that mound is probably hydrate. You know, and we're fantastic the way they occupy those niches in the hydrate and probably help create the texture that you're seeing. Yeah, maybe we can scan a bit left and get a bit more of the. And maybe we can scan down a bit and to the left and try to zoom into that bigger depression down below. Yeah, I don't know how much light we're going to have, but looks like more of the same. What I'm trying to get a feeling for was whether there is actually fluid coming out of that. Maybe not. Maybe it's just my imagination.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. It's possible.
Well, I mean, something's keeping that depression open. You know, otherwise, I would expect that we'd see sediment filling it over time. So I think there may be some flow. What's the temperature? Temperature. Yeah, it's no different. So you're not seeing any warmer flow coming out, but there seems to be turbulence associated with that opening that I'm not seeing around it.
Take note that their feelings, their heads are not moving.
It wouldn't surprise me whether there isn't some flow associated with that opening, though. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Something is having to feed the hydrate to keep it. You know, you've probably got some methane in solution that is keeping the hydrate from.
Yeah, how stable is methane hydrate at this depth?
I would, you know, I'm not a geochemist. My guess is it is slowly dissolving when it's in contact with seawater at this depth.
Right.
So I think the reason that we're seeing it is because an opening has been created, probably because of release of flow of some kind, and that we're seeing the colonization by the ice worms, but that this is an evanescent deposit. I don't think it's staying very long.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was some fluid escaping from there. It's similar to what we see above those mussel beds when you can see that stuff is kind of moving around even if we don't see bubbles coming out.
Well, this is when sampling would be an interesting thing to do. You know, you get a sample of a water sample in an opening like this, and you know that's in the future for Okeanos. This is what we can observe, but we're not able to sample, and this is one of the times when sampling would be important. Okay, gentlemen, that's great. Do we want to take any more of a look around here before we've got about another 12, 13 minutes? Yeah, go ahead. I think it's probably 40 or 50 centimeter wide opening. No, it's not that wide, 20 to 30. I very much believe that that's a fluid escape conduit. Probably the reason that the hydrate is actually, that whole structure could be hydrate, and we're just seeing the hydrate because there's a fluid escape conduit there. Might be why it's colonized by the ice worms, because it's actually,
Yeah.
it's there at
That
the
could
water
be.
column, whereas the other hydrate is actually covered. That's great. Well, our navigation noise seems to have damped down, so we're immediately north and west of waypoint 9. If we wanted to make our way slowly towards waypoint 9, which is south and east, for the remainder of the dive, that would work for me.
Bob noted some bubbles. I thought I might have seen one too there.
I don't know, I couldn't tell whether there was turbulence associated with fluid escaping that feature or bubbles, but
I didn't see it until we had lifted off the ground. See, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
I think I'm seeing.
Right through the middle
I
of
think
the
I'm.
screen.
I think I'm seeing. I think I'm seeing snow, and I think you're seeing
Right.
turbulence associated with escape at that opening. I don't see bubbles. Yeah, let's
Okay.
move. Let's move a little south and east for the remainder of the dive, gentlemen. And we can flip those lasers off, please. Well, there's our depression again. That is really something. I love that. As a geologist, that's pretty fascinating to me. That could have been a hydrate mound like the mound we saw earlier that then was breached
Sure.
and collapsed.
Yeah, there could be a lot of hydrate under
I think there are mounds here that are probably hydrate constructions related to fluid escape, bubble escape, perhaps even oil escape that are covered by sediments, and then either because of upward movement of the salt diapir or collapse of the salt underneath, it collapses the roof pendant of these hydrate mounds and opens them up to dissolution. And
See some more bacterial staining. Some rocks.
yeah, very similar looking feature to what we saw earlier. It's a mound with bacterial staining and some. I'm sorry, we did see it earlier. Well, there we go. See, so what? I don't understand
It's
what the
very
disagreement.
similar.
I don't understand what the disagreement is.
Right.
So John, just keep pushing till your jetted comes taut and rise until you guys can see each other in the jetted cams. Copy that, Bill? Keep going with your jetted.
And we're off the bottom, heading to the surface.